Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Unstoppable Singer. I am Danielle Tucker. I am a singer, a vocal coach, and a lead singer of the Mighty Untouchables band. The Unstoppable Singer is a live interview style show where we dive into the lives of real professional singers who have achieved great feats in their careers. And we explore the challenges and triumphs that come with a life under the bright lights, and we learn what being unstoppable truly means to them. So, if you are passionate about music and the stories of remarkable artists, then you're in the right place. And now I am going to introduce my guest tonight without further ado. It is Shelli Frances. Raised in Central California, Shelli started belting out songs from the backyard cherry tree at the tender age of 3. And after singing in church with a Christian folk band for 2 years, Shelli began her professional singing career at the young age of 21. She went on to develop an incredible vocal range and sings in a dizzying array of styles and genres, from sultry jazz to powerhouse vocals for rock, pop, country, and dance music. She's a versatile performer with extensive experience both on stage and in the recording studio. Shelli has appeared with various bands for casinos, corporate shows, private parties, and nightclubs. She even had her own San Diego-based contemporary and classic rock cover band called Firefly. Shelli recorded a 6-song demo produced by Max T. Barnes at Curb Studio in Nashville back in 1999 and had a recording contract offered just days before the tragic events of 9/11 occurred. So let me bring her on and we will dive right in with Shelli. Hi, Shelli.
Hi, Danielle.
How are you?
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here. It's such an honor. We've tried to connect and make this happen for a long time now, so I'm glad we're finally here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's go for it, Shelli. Let's take us back in time and tell us a little bit how your journey began as a singer. As I introduced you, you started singing at 3 years old. Did you come from a musical family?
Well, actually, I was adopted, and at like age 2, and my mom just had stories about me. She was, you were just always out in the backyard singing in the tree. They had a cherry tree in the backyard, and that was like my comfy space. And I would
Yeah.
just go out there. She said, you sounded like you were belting out opera or something. It was like phonetic opera, because I,
Mm-hmm.
of course, didn't know what I was singing, or, wasn't really talking that much yet. But so that was kind of the start of that. And so I didn't really end up having my parents tried to be as supportive at whatever we were interested in. I had a sister that was adopted from a different situation that I grew up with, but so but they were not music people at all.
Mm-hmm.
They liked to listen to it, but no one in the family was really musical. So they did their best to try and figure out how to support that. And then in high school, the kid thing, you all do the chorus in school and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And
Yeah.
um, then when I was in high school, choir, there was an ad in the paper to um, come and sign up to be in this. It was a Clovis Ideal Miss pageant, and they had a talent competition. So I said, "Oh, a place to go sing." So I
Uh-huh.
wasn't really thinking about the pageant part of it much. I just thought, "Oh, it'd be cool to get to go and have a place to sing,"
Mm-hmm.
and so I did it. Well, and I ended up winning. And so I had to go do a bunch of other stuff, and it was fun, but it was kind of a unexpected consequence of having a place to sing. But
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of where it all started, of course, at a very young age. And back then, I say back then because I'm a
Mm-hmm.
lot older than you. In the 70s was when I was a teenager. So
Mm-hmm.
do the math. But so it was was quite a trek, because back then, in order for anybody, you were kind of like a needle in a haystack. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
was really going to find you. You kind of had to go and look. You had to
Mm-hmm.
go and seek stuff out a lot, because
Right.
nobody was, that was how you did record deals back then, was like you had to go and seek stuff out. You had to make connections and do all that kind of stuff. Whereas now I think the culture has changed so much, because um, the young aspiring singers nowadays have so many avenues available to
Mm-hmm.
them,
Yes, so true.
online, the different, websites and social media, and all the ways they have to promote themselves and their
Mm-hmm.
own music. When I started, everybody discouraged me from trying to do any original music. So, oh,
Hmm.
you'll never make it. The only way you're going to make money when you sing is if you sing with a cover band. You have to sing with a
Mm.
cover, because that everybody, all the nightclubs that were around then, they all wanted people that played top 40. They wanted people that played music that their patrons would recognize and want to get up and dance to. And so that's how that all started. And so it was. I'm pleased to see that there's a lot more avenues for young aspiring musicians now to all. There's competition shows. I don't know if you've been watching the Voice just had their finale last
Mhm.
night, and the American Idols. It's like we didn't really have very much of that
Yeah.
back then. I think when I was in my 20s was when Star Search came out. Remember?
Yeah.
I don't know if
I
you
was
remember.
on Star Search, Shelly, as a kid.
No, you
Yes.
were?
Yes.
Oh
When I was
my
13 years
gosh!
old. Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
So I
Okay.
remember it well. I was a huge fan too. My whole family
Well, I
was.
remember. Yeah, I remember I went to San Francisco. I got called to come and audition, and went to San Francisco, to a studio in San Francisco to go and audition. And I was just this little kind of raspy voiced rock singer at the time, and almost everybody, all the other singers on the show were all soul singers, and
Mhm.
dance, like dancey kind of stuff. They didn't know what to do with me, to be honest. They kind of were like, "Do you have any other songs?" Because I was singing rock songs to them, and they wanted me to sing something different. And I think that was kind of the first inkling that I had that, okay, I'm going to have to become more versatile if I'm going to
Mm.
be able to work in this industry, because, um, which kind of sent me on my cover band journey of being able to sing any song, rock, pop, country, and whatever was popular. Because you know how music kind of goes in phases of popularity. What
Yeah.
genre is really popular? There were like a couple really big country phases where everybody loved country, and then that would go out, and then everybody loved pop, and then that would kind of fade out because people get bored. And it was kind of an interesting. That's kind of how the band thing ran when I was here in the Valley when I first started out too.
Mhm.
Um, it was like, oh, the biggest club in town wants this
Yeah.
playlist, kind of, whatever. and
Mhm.
and that's the band woodshed. We'd put together an entire 4 sets of that kind of music, and we'd be the house band.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
kind of how it worked.
That's
And
true.
but then when I moved to San Diego, that was a huge turning point for me when I moved to San Diego.
Hmm.
Uh,
So you trained classically though when you were younger, is that
mhm.
right?
I did.
Yeah.
I
And
did. I
how
was
did that
When I was
come
like
to be? And
17. Yeah, I was
okay.
17, and I was training with the director of the Fresno Opera at the time.
Wow.
And she was a super nice lady, but I would get super frustrated because when you're 16 and 17 years old, all you want to do is sing all the popular music that's going
Right.
on. You want to sing the popular stuff. You don't want all that old, you think of it's like, oh, it's all old fashioned stuff. And she'd be making me learn arias, and I'd be fighting her every step of the way. She made deals with me. If you'll learn this aria for me, I'll help you get this pop song ready for this performance that you're going to do for whatever, So
Yeah.
that's how I kind of worked my my vocal coaching back, because then she could help me, she could help me coach me a little bit on some of the pop stuff that I was singing, because I was going and making appearances for like a whole year as a ideal Miss Clovis. And so I would have to go and make these appearances. Well, I'm not going to go to these other places and sing an opera aria.
Right.
I wanted to sing something popular that everybody would want to hear. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of how I worked that.
Yeah. And then you are known for your big power, vocals and your range. How do you think having that classical training played a role in developing your voice, even though you went down a completely
It
different
it
road
was
genre-wise?
everything. It
Yeah.
was everything. I don't I would never have even had a clue how to hit some of the stuff that I ultimately was doing, when I was singing pop and rock, and every band I was in, they were, oh, Shelli can sing that, because they knew I could hit the high stuff. So they had me singing Journey and Heart and all the big high range stuff, because they knew I could do it. But I could not have done any of it had I not had the classical training that I had, because it taught me my breath control. It taught me how to open, when and how to open my throat to hit certain notes. And you just it's part of everything. Classical training was part of everything that I ever sang in my entire career. It
Yeah.
was wouldn't have been nearly as successful if I had not had that training.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's so fascinating, because I think for a long time we've heard that a lot of people tell singers that, oh, you have to have classical legitimate training before you go and choose any style. It's critical to your foundation. And I
mhm.
was classically trained too, and of course, same story as you. Never even considered going down that road. But, that's
Uh-huh.
what was available to me at that time. And while
Same.
I don't think that singers nowadays, I don't agree with the opinion that you need to have the classical training, but I agree with you that for myself, I just feel like that training put me in tune with my instruments
Mhm.
so well, and I just
Absolutely.
I knew every gear that my voice was capable of.
Right. Well, and right before I went to Nashville, um, my management sent me for a session with Seth Riggs. Are you
Mhm.
familiar with Seth Riggs?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I went up to LA and met with him. They were just like, go and just kind of have a little, like a, I guess like a session to kind of just get ready, to prepare, to make sure I was doing everything correctly, because apparently they had sent somebody else to a big studio, to a recording project, and within 5 hours the singer had lost their voice in the
Mm.
studio and couldn't sing
Mhm.
anymore. So they wanted to make sure, kind of a little tune up, kind of a little assessment to see how I was singing and what was going on. And so I paid the money, went up and had a session with Seth Riggs, and I sang for him for about a half an hour, and he goes, well, you're doing everything right. Um, I'm not sure why you're here. And I went, well, because we want to make sure. I thought, what if I've, taken on some, sometimes when you're singing a lot and you're
Mhm.
performing a lot, and for 4 hours, 4 sets of material, most of the shows that we do are pretty long. And
Mhm.
they were like, let's just make sure you haven't picked up any bad habits along the way.
Right.
And,
Right.
just to make sure.
Mhm.
And so it all went really well. I went back and did the studio project, and um, in fact, my voice got stronger and warmer the longer we were in the studio. It was like beginning of the day was okay. Then by the end of the day, I mean, I was going like one take, and they're like, oh, we're going to use it. So it was a really special time for me when I went to Nashville and did all that. But it was challenging. You know, I had kids. I had my daughters. When I moved to San Diego, I had a 1-year-old and a 12-year-old.
Wow.
And I was trying to take the next steps on my career path. So,
what brought you out to San Diego?
I had a good friend who had a family member that lived down there, and we were both I was just at this like stagnant point at that time. I was living in Merced. I don't know if you know where Merced is. It's just north of Fresno, a little ways. And everything just seemed like everything was kind of a dead end at that point, and I needed to change something. And I think that a lot of people go through that in their lives. I've done it multiple times in my lifetime where I'm sitting in something and I'm just like, how do I break out of this? Where you just get kind of stagnant. You feel like your energy is just stagnant, and you're not moving forward. You're not really moving backward, but you're not really moving forward. And at that point in time, I felt that it was time for me to move forward. And she's like, hey, I'm gonna move down there. Why don't you and the girls move down to San Diego? You'll be closer to LA if you need, if there's music stuff you need to do there. And it made a lot of sense. And so I just took the leap of faith and just did it. And I know Luna's feeling her friskies over here.
Hey, Luna.
Luna has her own fan base, by the way. Every time I haven't posted any pictures of her for a while, people start asking.
Yes. Where is she? Bring her on. Yeah.
Where's Luna?
Yes. Speaking of fan base too, before you go on with your story, you have some fans in the chat too. Cindy Clark and Lori Miller are saying hello to you.
Oh,
and that
hi,
they love
Cindy.
you.
Hi, Lori.
Thanks for being with us.
Cindy is the mother of my oldest daughter's best friend. When we moved down to San Diego, she was the first friend that my oldest daughter Katie made. That when we moved far away from all her friends up here, and her daughter's name is Ashley, and Ashley and Katie have been best friends ever since. That was like in 1996 when I moved down to San Diego. Wow. And then Lori actually has the same name as my sister.
Oh, wow.
Valley View, when I was singing at Valley View, she and her friends used to come in and watch the band all the time, and they were just like, they became Firefly super fans. And we've been sisters ever since. So she had my maiden name and then my sister's name, so she had, we just kind of had that connection, and we've been friends ever since. So hi, gals. Awesome. Nice to see you here.
Yeah, welcome, ladies. So you mentioned earlier that coming to San Diego was a big turning point for you. How was that? How did things transition for you?
It was interesting. Back then, that was in '96 when I moved down there, and the main way that you looked for work as a musician was the San Diego Reader.
Right.
They had a whole section of who's looking for what in musician land, right? And I made some phone calls and looked up, found a couple of things in the ad. First audition I went to, I got the gig. And so I kind of started from there, and then other musicians would come. They would hear about, there's a new singer in town. And they'd a bunch of them would show up after their gigs to come and hear hear who's singing it at, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in Carlsbad. I was in Carlsbad at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I started getting a lot of other job offers after that. And so I kind of just started working with, you know, a lot of different people. But I was working for everybody else. And sometimes that's, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I I decided I needed to learn about business
Mm.
because when you're in this position of being a musician, a singer, an artist, whatever, you have to learn how to promote yourself. You are your own best promoter. You have, you know, I had to sit down and figure all this stuff out for myself because where are you going to go learn that? You don't really
Mm-hmm.
have, back then anyway, they didn't really have music business classes. They kind of do
Right.
now. Uh,
Yeah.
they kind of do now, which
Mm-hmm.
is cool. But I had to go and I went to like an entrepreneurial business training thing that I went to for like off and on for a couple of years
Mm-hmm.
and learned about all kinds of, you know, marketing and PR and contracts and all the things that I had to learn that I put to use when I had my own band. You have to
Mm.
know all that stuff. Well, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you have to know all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took a crash course in building a MySpace page. I learned how to code a little bit, which was kind of interesting because when I was first starting my band Firefly, MySpace was like really the only social media site that was really up and, you know, running.
Mm-hmm.
And so I put up my Firefly, you know, MySpace page and and
Yeah.
learned how to do the code to make the background what I wanted. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I'd been working with a lot of other people, and it just something wasn't gelling right. And I said, I just need to do my own thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when I decided to have my own band. And I had some friends who had an original band, and I thought this would be a good way to um, freshen up some cover songs. Is get some guys that are really doing solo. They're doing their own original music, but they kind of weren't really doing much
Mm-hmm.
after a while. And so, and of course, we all went through it when 9/11 happened.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it put the brakes on a lot of stuff
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and a lot of stuff that never came back
Right.
after, afterwards. So, you know, they weren't really doing much, and I approached them. I was just you know, good friends, and I was a huge fan of their music. And I said, hey, I have this opportunity. I have venues, I have work. Would you guys consider doing this with me? And they said
Mm-hmm.
yes. And that's how. And then 4 months after I put Firefly together, 4 months
Mm-hmm.
we'd only been together for, and I entered us into the UMC, the Viejas
Yes.
Battle of the Bands thing.
I remember that.
We ended up coming in the top four, so it was like
Mm-hmm.
okay. And yeah, it was good. And we just, you know, took off from there. And then
The
health.
rest was history. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And then
that's it. I'm so glad you brought that up because that's the first time I ever saw you sing. And I remember
oh,
I was
okay.
there, being there and just thinking, "Oh my God, her
Oh,
voice is huge and
oh,
just powerful, just a
oh, thank
powerhouse
you.
vocalist." And that was great. So a well-earned victory for you. I know it wasn't first place, but still, that was a big contest though. So
It
that's
was.
amazing.
It
Yeah,
was.
yeah. I
But
wanted to back up a little bit on some of the points that you were making about, being an entrepreneur in music. And of course, the whole mission behind the Unstoppable Singer is to help emerging singers, become more independent and industrious, and, help them to understand how to navigate the business of music, because it isn't enough to just be a good singer. If you really want to, have a sustainable career in all of this. So that was so smart of you to have done that. I was wondering, the recording contract that you had and going to Nashville, was that before coming to San Diego, or was that after?
No, that happened once I moved there. That's why I was saying moving to San Diego was sort of a huge turning point for me, because once I started learning all the business side of things and the marketing and all the stuff that I learned, I also made some contacts and ended up with a production company in Nashville that was interested in having me come and record. And I ended up not going with them for management. That was like a whole nother story, but that I don't need to get into. But I ended up finding a different management company here in LA. And I say here in LA. At the time, I was closer to LA, but and we got on this trail of, and I had made so many contacts during that time through that entrepreneurial business training that I was doing, that I actually had the contacts to bring investors in for a multimedia project that we had put together at that same time. And so what happened was, this producer, and he was he was in management also, but he was signed as a writer with Warner Chappell at the time, and he wanted to bring me in, and we had a contract all ready to go. Plus, since I brought the investment group that was going to invest he was going to have this. It was a company idea that was new at the time. No one else was doing it. They had a division of the company that was TV production, one that was movie production, and one that was music production. And they all fed each other. So like if somebody needed a theme song for their movie or for their TV show, then they would come to the recording side of the business. And it just kind of all was very symbiotic. And we had it all ready to go. Contracts were set to be signed on September 15th. And 4 days before that happened, that horrible, horrible thing happened. And it was just beyond the beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how that changed the arrangement then after that happened?
Everything the whole thing just fell apart, because then at that point, I don't know if you remember, there was a lot of concern for economic stuff.
Yes.
And people decided that and at best, an entertainment project is considered a high risk investment.
Yeah.
It just is. In the business world, an entertainment project, especially a new up and coming one, is a huge risk. And so once the dust settled, because I'm telling you, we didn't even think about what was happening for a good 3 to 4 weeks in. Once that day happened, I mean, I knew people who lost people. It was a devastating time to be in this country. I know it was global. The sentiment was global, but so about 3 or 4 weeks after that happened, we all our heads kind of came up and we went, I guess, well, we should probably figure out what's going to happen here now with this project. And as it turned out, everybody was like, "Oh, we can't do it. We can't invest in an entertainment project right now."
Yeah.
And and then it never came back after that. That's, in fact, after that was when I was kind of like, it took about 2 to 3 years because the whole calendar cleared out. Everything canceled because San Diego's a huge like destination for it's a corporate destination, it's a wedding destination, it's tourism is what drives entertainment really in San Diego County and in LA even. I knew people in LA that everything just crashed. It was like it took a good 2 to 3 years for my calendar to start kind of getting back to where it was before the towers hit. But I started rethinking a lot of things. I took a really big step back at that point and kind of did a little bit of evaluation and inner work and inner reflection about what's really your goal here. What's your end game with this? What do you, at that point too, I'm getting it. I think that nowadays too, it's the age factor is not as big a deal as it was back then too. When I was up and coming, everybody was telling me how I was too old and I had children, so I wouldn't be able to focus on my career. No, I was fully focused on my career and still could take my kids to school. It's like, we didn't have as much gender support maybe as females, which I think is why the business has been so male dominated for so many decades, because it's not because there's a lack of talented female artists.
Right.
That's darn sure. It's just that the business of it was telling us that you're a woman, you can't, you have kids, you have responsibilities, whereas the men kind of come and go. And so they put a lot more focus and a lot more support behind male artists. It was a thing, especially in the 70s and 80s. We didn't have all the, I could tell you horror stories. We didn't have Me Too and Time's Up and all that stuff. We had a lot of those kind of hurdles to navigate by ourselves. But that was what you did. That was just what you did.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. And it is another reason why now is such a great time for emerging artists and singers, because the landscape, the rules, the structure of it is just radically different. It is radically different. And we're fortunate for that, but that's
it makes me very happy for the new aspiring artists, female artists coming up, because we've shed a light in so many dark corners. I think, and let me just have a moment for Tina Turner today.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
If there was ever an artist, a female artist, who had to survive the darker side of a male-dominated business, it was her. I have so much respect and just wish her well on her new journey, her new chapter in her journey, her soul's journey. But she was a huge inspiration for me. Her presence was so huge in a time when it was really hard It was really hard in the business for women who, and they put up with a lot of stuff. I didn't put up with half, not even a fraction. I wouldn't even go there with what I went through, but it was definitely a male world back then, and I'm just heartbroken that to hear that she passed.
Yeah. Me too.
And that's the thing too about aging. There we go. I'm on it. You see, I ditched the dye a few years back and never looked back. And then I started letting it grow during COVID when we were in lockdown. And the longer it got, the more everybody's like, don't cut it, don't cut it. So now I'm like, okay, I don't know what to do with it because it just keeps getting longer and longer. And everybody's like, oh no, it's so nice. It's silver and long and curly. Yeah, because I have really naturally curly hair. So everybody's like, no, don't cut it.
Yeah, and you're really known for your hair, throughout your career.
And when I stopped singing, when I stopped Firefly, I cut it all off in a pixie and went platinum to do the transition, and that was that.
Yeah. Let's talk about that transition, if that's okay.
We can talk about it because it's a huge part of my story and a huge part of my journey. When I first started Firefly, I knew I was kind of struggling with my health a little bit, but you're just in that place where you're like, I had gone from being the healthiest I'd ever been to all of a sudden I knew something was really wrong, but nobody could tell me what it was. Oh no, your blood work looks fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. And it wasn't.
Yeah.
And I started having a lot of problems with like a lot of muscle and soft tissue pain, tendons. It was just, I would get home from a gig and I'd be sitting in my car out front, and I just didn't even know if my legs would walk me in the house after a show. And it got to the point where I started also not being able to move around as much on stage like I was. I was kind of a bouncer. I liked to move around a lot, and I was not as able to do that anymore. And I noticed some things going, dizziness and just different aspects of weird health things that nobody could explain it or tell me what the problem was. It took me years to finally figure it out, and it was only after I had a near-death experience and almost died from sepsis. And that was in 2018, actually. I had already ended the band by then, and I ended the band in 2014 because I couldn't do it anymore. I was so fatigued all the time, and I was in a lot of pain. And even if nobody can tell you what's wrong, it's still there.
Right.
And so I didn't get a lot of my diagnoses, which there's multiple diagnoses, but and it's all autoimmune, and it affects the soft tissue in my body, which brings me to an important singer's point that I really wanted to have a minute to discuss, because I just went and saw Judy Collins. Are you familiar with Judy Collins?
Yeah,
from back in the 60s and 70s?
Okay.
I saw her in concert. She's 84.
Wow.
Danielle, she's 84 years old. And I was watching her. She was here in Fresno at the Tower Theater. And a friend of mine and I went to see her. And she was amazing. And I'm like, how is she still doing this at 84? And the thing that I've noticed, and I've talked to a couple of other singers who are my age and a little older, and I've spoken to some other singers about it. And there does come a time where if you've defined yourself by all the things you can do and the range that you do have and have had for so many years, there comes a point in time where you now have to make another shift into finding your new voice and a new way
Mm-hmm.
to tell those stories. Because
Yeah.
I still feel like I'm not done with the
Mm-hmm.
storytelling that music does. For me, music is about storytelling
Mm-hmm.
and connecting with your lyric and
Yeah.
just, conveying something that touches another person.
Yeah.
And um, I, I've stopped singing. I haven't sung since I ended the band back in 2014. And
Mm-hmm.
then I got sick, and it was a long recovery. Had
Mm-hmm.
uh, had to do all the learn to walk thing and all the stuff. So it was a very long process, and I'm still going through some of it. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
at a point now where I'm like, I'm kind of looking at maybe of ways where I can maybe find a new vocal style, a new thing that will allow the body that I have and the vocal cords that I have now
Mm-hmm.
after all of that I went through health wise. Um, and I don't know. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
music's not done with me yet. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Probably not. Probably not. So I'm curious to know when you when you stopped the band in 2014, the band was still going strong at the time, but your
They
health
were. They
was
were. It was a really
declining.
hard decision for. Yeah, it was a really hard decision to make.
Mm-hmm.
I basically told them. Um, I gave them like 3 or 4 months,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, find another singer. I gave them all the contact information of all the, agents and all the booking people of all the places we had worked and all the agents that had booked us for events and things like that. And I said, I'll give you all of it.
Yeah.
If one of you wants to take over and keep going, you just have
Mm-hmm.
to find another singer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, oh, and of course, I told them they had to change their name too, because
Mm-hmm.
Firefly was at that point, was very much associated with me
Right.
being the singer and all of the management that the agents and everything that were booking us. If it was Firefly, they were booking it with me as the singer.
Sure.
And so they did take on a different name, and they
Mm-hmm.
got another singer, and they kept working and did really well. I give Chris James credit for keeping
Mm-hmm.
their keeping that boat floating for everybody in the band. He kept everything going, moving. He's still doing it. He's still doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, he is. Yeah. I as singers, right or wrong, we tie so much of our identity to being a singer. And it just is so, so defining for us. That had to have been an extremely difficult decision to make. I, can you
It
talk
was
about?
I agonized. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agonized over that decision for a really long time. There was lots of therapy to be had over that
Mhm.
whole last. Let's see, what year is it? It's been almost 10 years.
Mhm. Mhm.
Next year it'll be 10 years since I had to leave, and I'm telling you, it was it was one of the most agonizing decisions I ever had to make.
Yeah.
Was It's like I knew I had to walk away at that point,
Mhm.
um, because I was afraid that I was going to collapse on stage at that point,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that would have just been beyond the beyond for me. So, but yeah, it was a very challenging because I mean I've been a professional singer at that point for over 35 years.
Right.
It becomes your identity. It's
Mm-hmm.
what you do. It's how you are in the world. It's how you relate to everything in the world. And for me, singing was more than just, um, a fun career to do. It was the way that I communicated. It was that vibration in the center of my body that I could
Mm-hmm.
feel when I sang. It healed me.
Yeah.
It was hard to lose the most healing thing that I did in my life,
Yeah. Mm.
because it really did. Music and singing for me, having that vibration in my body was always like, it was a healing experience for
Mm.
me. And
Yeah.
it was very difficult to feel like I had lost it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can imagine. But it is, I think it's such a important thing for you sharing that with, singers watching this now, because having come out of COVID, the common story is that, singers in the business were just burning themselves out left and
Yeah.
right, and we're, trying to keep up with these unbelievable schedules and just,
Mhm.
leading these very unsustainable lifestyles. And then COVID
Yeah.
hits, and it's a little bit of a relief at first, this little break for
Right.
everybody.
Get a little
But
break, get a little
yeah, and
rest.
it,
Yeah.
of course, it drags on forever, and then it kind of forced us to reflect on the way we were living our lives. And
Exactly.
now we're kind of
Burning it
back
at
to.
both ends all the time
Mhm,
it's
mhm.
exhausting, and it's exhausting on your body. It
Yeah.
kind of it it contributes to a breakdown in your body at some
Mhm.
point. And
Right. Right.
just it's a physical. People don't realize what a physical job we have, Danielle.
Mhm,
You
mhm,
have to be strong. You have to have strength in your core to
mhm,
be able to move around and entertain people while carrying a tune,
mhm,
and singing it well and doing what you do and having the breath control. It's, you know, to not be able to even like get in the gym or work out or whatever anybody else does to keep their body healthy,
mhm,
because while you're doing what you do as a singer and as an entertainer, you have to be your physical well-being has to be really on point to be able to
mhm.
do it
Yeah.
at all. You have to be
Mhm,
physically capable to
mhm.
watch to watch Judy Collins stand in high heel boots at 84. Oh my God. Just watch her stand there for an hour and a half or two on little spike heeled boots, playing her guitar and singing. I was just mesmerized. I'm like,
Wow. That's
yeah,
incredible.
it was.
I
It was incredible. She inspired me.
Yeah.
Watching her inspired me. I'm like, maybe music isn't done with me yet. Maybe
Yeah.
it can still, in the meantime, the other aspect of COVID forced me to find another way to express myself creatively.
Mhm.
And I started writing
Mm.
one book, and now I've got two in process. So that's
Wow.
kind of a weird little twist of, oh my goodness. Um,
Yeah.
but so who knows where that's going to go? But I'm pretty deep in them right now, so it's nothing I can just walk away from. But we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you have shared your journey with us, and I think it's such an important story, as I was saying, for other singers to hear, because you've had to persevere through so many different things that could potentially have been career ending had you chosen to do
Yeah,
so, at
it's
that
never a
time.
straight line. It's never a
Right,
straight line.
never, never.
Mhm.
And having to ultimately make that decision to step away from music, I know it's just unfathomable to, a lot of singers. But
Yep.
the fact that you chose you over the identity of singing, in that you knew you were more than your voice. You had to take care of yourself. While I know the heartbreak is difficult, um, but that it's so important for singers to know that singing will always be with you. Music will always be with you, no matter what container it's in at any given time. But it doesn't define who you are, and it shouldn't be the thing that leads to your demise, or bad health. And I think it's
Yeah.
amazing that you chose that.
I learned a lot about it doesn't define me,
Mhm.
but it definitely was um, just the most like impactful
Mm,
part of my lifetime.
yeah,
Besides having my kids, of course, my daughters are amazing, and just I just I can't even don't even get me started on those
don't get me
girls.
started.
Um, but um, but music was a huge part of my development as a human being.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know, it was probably the most difficult thing that I've ever had to choose to walk away from for, you know, and who knows? Like I said, it might not be done with me yet. We shall see.
Yeah. I don't think so either. And it never did leave you. Obviously, it's still there. You're still, there's still these sources of inspiration that are, you know, being put in your path. And I think the fact that, you were so inspired by Judy Collins
Mm-hmm.
is I think that's a really special moment, when it makes you consider, like, maybe there is a
There's
new
a different
chapter for
way.
me. Mhm.
There's the voice you had in your 20s and 30s and even beyond, and then you know there's changes that happen, and it doesn't mean that you can't change with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to exploring that a little bit more.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait to see what you do. We'll be watching. Yeah. Well, to wrap things up, I always like to ask this question, and I'm really eager to hear what you say about this, because your story does have so many things that you've had to persevere through. You obviously have so much strength inside of you to get through very, very difficult things. What makes you unstoppable?
I think that's a good question. I think that throughout my journey, when it seemed like being stopped was a probability,
Mhm.
you know, I think that there's just something inside. There's something inside that drives you on,
Mhm.
and it makes quitting, even though I had to walk away when I did in
Mhm.
that respect, all along the path when I would come up to these what were seeming like roadblocks everywhere, all they are is a fork in the road,
Yeah.
and you take one or the other,
Mhm.
and you end up where you end up, and then you come to another fork. So there's never really, there's no place that has to be able to stop you. You just take the different road. You just take the
Mhm.
other fork.
Yeah.
There's you become a stronger version of yourself with each fork in the road that you take.
Mhm.
So those forks end up becoming, they're like in video games, they're little power boosters.
Right. Yeah, I like that.
Little power boosters. When you make those choices, you go, okay, well, there's a fork in this road. You
Mhm.
become unstoppable when you learn that taking a fork in the road means you keep going.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say it, always ended up being for the best. Even
Yes.
if it was hard, even if it was, you were thinking, that's it, it's done, I'm over, and the cat's meowing at me. Um, he's agreeing, I think.
Yeah.
There's no end, it's not an end in the road, it's a fork, and you just
Yeah.
take the next fork in the road.
Yeah. No, that's so powerful. That's so powerful and so true. It's just choices. It's just
Mm-hmm.
choices, and you just have to
It's
keep going. You just have to keep listening to that inner strength
it's a
that you said
pivot.
that
It's a
says,
pivot. You just
mhm,
learn to pivot when
mhm,
it's time for a change. You learn to pivot, and we always become more defined by the grace in which we pivot.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I
Find
love this
find.
conversation, Shelly. This was awesome. I'm so glad we finally made this connection happen, and I
Thank you
so
so much for
appreciate
having
you.
me. I really
Yeah.
really loved getting together with you today too.
Yeah, this was great. Well, I will continue to watch your story unfold on Instagram or whatever platform we're on at the time. But I'm excited about the inspiration that you recently experienced. And I can't wait to see what happens. But I know we need to give you back to Luna now. She's had it with this whole situation.
This
But
this is her normal zoomy time.
yeah.
She starts getting a little zoomy right now.
Uh, that's great. Well, we'll let you have your evening back, and thanks once again, and thank you for everybody who joined us live tonight and jumping into the chat. It was a wonderful conversation, and I'll be back here next Wednesday with another fantastic singer. But we'll say goodnight for now. Thank you, Shelly.
Thank you again, Danielle. Have a good evening.
Good
Bye,
night.
everybody.